Samuel Hannigan and I filed for divorce. I don't want anything except money. Samuel put his hands in his pockets and sneered. You don't want the son you love so much? No, because the child's 5th birthday wish is, can Dad and Mom get divorced? I want Aunt Sue to be my mom. 1. I handed Samuel the divorce papers. He looked at it as he would any ordinary document on his desk. His eyes were cold and distant. His passion for me probably only shows up at night when he is demanding too much. Gabrielle Taylor, you have to consider the occasion when you are throwing a tantrum. This is a company. He was sure that I would not bear to get divorced. It's just a means of jealousy. I'm not making a fuss. I was treated like an ordinary visitor in the reception room and waited for him for 3 hours. You also have to accept the sympathetic gazes of others from time to time. How could it be a quarrel? Miss Sue is here to see Mr. Hannigan. You don't have to wait even a minute. So the rumor that Hannigan always hates his wife is true? It's true, their Hannigan always really didn't like his wife. The person he likes has always been Sue. Samuel, I want a divorce, the sooner the better. Gabrielle, what are you doing? Samuel then lowered his eyes to look at the agreement. Gabrielle, this is all you want for a divorce? Yes, when I got pregnant unexpectedly. His original intention was to use the money as compensation to keep me away from him. But I didn't leave. Because I am a book-traveling strategist. Giving birth to Warren Hannigan and marrying him was a task assigned to me by the system. Unfortunately, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't warm Samuel's heart. We have no future. This money can be considered as belated compensation. The $50 million in the agreement was a drop in the bucket for him. But for me it is a huge sum of money, enough for me to live happily. Samuel stood up and looked down at me. The expensive haute couture suit made him look even taller and more upright. He put his hands in his pockets and sneered. Just money. You don't want the son you love so much anymore? I smiled faintly and said, no. 2. I used to love Warren Hannigan. After all, he is related to me by blood. Over the past 5 years I have devoted all my patience and love to every step of his growth. Perhaps because he hated the whole family, Samuel had no feelings for Warren Hannigan. The first time Samuel saw him after he was born, he just said something lightly. She looks a lot like Gabrielle. After saying that, he threw Warren Hannigan to the nanny at home. But strangely, Warren Hannigan likes Samuel very much. He has an excellent talent for languages. When he was just 3 years old, he said to me with a cold face, Dad doesn't come home, it's your problem, Mom. I just thought it was just childish talk. Later, when he was 4 years old, he met Sue for the first time after she returned home after her divorce. When I got home, I told my nanny, no wonder Dad likes Aunt Sue. I like her too. Aunt Sue is gentler than my mom, and knows how to make me happy better than my mom. Just because I don't let him eat too much candy. He pouted angrily. I had just come out of the kitchen when I heard his accusations. Holding back the discomfort in her heart, she said softly, Warren, Mom will compensate you with new candy. My mom made this. The combination of pear and hawthorn is delicious and healthy. But he grabbed the pear hawthorn candy I made and threw it into the trash can. I don't want the garbage you made. I want the premium candy Aunt Sue brought from Italy, she yelled. I just wonder what's wrong with cavities. I stared at him in amazement. The son I gave birth to looks so much like his father that I can't even keep him warm. Especially on his 5th birthday party. Both father and son invited Sue. When I was lighting the candles, the long-lost system sound suddenly rang in my mind. Host, sorry for the wait. I'm back. Even though no one else could hear the sound, I subconsciously walked out of the hall. Host, your mission has been completed. You have enough points to go back. In the original world, I was accidentally injured and became a vegetable. Therefore, make a deal with the system, complete the task and wake up. You can also choose to stay. After all, you have a home now. In the original world, you were all alone. Just when I was hesitating, Warren Hannigan made the decision for me. As soon as I stepped into the hall, I heard his birthday wishes. The voice was clear, loud, and not even shying away from me. Can Dad and Mom get divorced? I want Aunt Sue to be my mom. Everyone was stunned. Samuel just frowned slightly. Change your wish. Sue covered her mouth and laughed. "Oh, you can't say that, you are so cute." But there was an indelible look of pride in his eyes. I smiled a little. I turned around and said to the system, "Help me go home. I don't want to wait even a second." 3. But the system told me bad news. Since the central system has received too many second and third-time hosts, there is now a cooling-off period for those who leave the system. I was confused. The system coughed lightly. "Just like the cooling-off period for divorces among you humans, we need to wait." Wait for him. Damn it. I silently reminded myself to use polite language and asked with restraint, "How long?" 3 years. 3 years. System, if you don't plant daylilies, are you afraid that the vegetables will get cold? The system was stunned for a moment. "Host, your swearing is a bit advanced." It was silent for 3 seconds and then said, "As compensation for my long absence, I will increase your points by 1/3. When you wake up from your vegetative state, you will be healthy and well." Okay, then I'll get a divorce first. That's why I'm standing in Samuel's office. "Samuel, let's get a divorce." Samuel lit a cigarette with a snap. He blew out a smoke ring and smiled in a ruffian way. "Gabrielle, have you forgotten? Who said 5 years ago that without Warren Hannigan she would die?" I said that. That year, Samuel heard the news that Sue was getting married abroad. He tortured me severely all night. The next day I developed a high fever and stayed alone in the room for 3 days. I forgot to take that medicine in a daze. Later it was discovered that she was pregnant with Warren Hannigan. When Samuel found out, he initially told me to abort Warren Hannigan with indifference. I remembered what the system said. If it leaks out now, it means the mission has failed. Host, you understand the consequences. I had no choice but to beg Samuel, "I will die if I lose the child." If I didn't ask him for help, with his ruthless style in the business world, he would have plenty of ways to deal with me. Samuel is a very cruel person to everyone, including himself. His only weakness is Sue, who had lived with him in the orphanage and saved him. Later, Sue was adopted by a wealthy family. Samuel has been wild since he was a child. He risked his life to rise from a small gangster to a big boss in the business world, all in order to gain the approval of Sue's adoptive parents and marry her. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to give away the huge pink diamond in his hand. Then came the news that Sue was getting married. It was much later that I realized. Samuel proposed to me out of the blue. It was also because of what Sue said. "Samuel, I'm married and hope to hear good news from you." 4. I looked at Samuel's handsome face. But I was thinking in my heart, "I hope I never see him again." I said calmly, "Since both you and your son like Sue, after the divorce you can start a family and everyone will be happy. Isn't that good?" Samuel narrowed his eyes at me. A bony hand lifted my chin. He smiled contemptuously. "Playing hard to get?" Then he stopped smiling and said fiercely, "You want to play, right? I'll accompany you. One more thing. After the divorce, you are never allowed to see Warren Hannigan without my consent." Threaten me? In the past, this would have been fatal to me. Because of love, people have soft spots. But now I don't want to love anyone, so I have no weaknesses. Under his provocative gaze, I replied calmly, "Okay." He was stunned for a moment, his eyes drooping. He grabbed the pen and wrote quickly on the agreement. Then he threw one to me. I picked up the agreement and turned to leave. Samuel gritted his teeth. "Gabrielle, you are leaving the Hannigan house tonight." "That's fine. My emotions right now are terribly stable." But then she paused and asked him with a smile, "You're asking me to leave before I even get the divorce certificate?" "I won't leave for nothing. Please pay the alimony in advance." "Thank you." Samuel had a hint of anger on his face. However, from what I know about him, he is quite generous when it comes to money. If nothing goes wrong, I will receive the 50 million tomorrow. Good. 5. Watching Gabrielle walk out of the office without looking back. Samuel felt inexplicably irritated. Just then, Special Assistant Foster came in with documents. He has followed Samuel for many years, so it is no exaggeration to say that he is his confidant. Brother Samuel's sister Gabrielle wants a divorce? While puffing out smoke, Samuel said coldly, "It's just a little fuss. She doesn't dare. How could she bear to abandon Warren Hannigan?" Special Assistant Foster smiled and said, "That's true. Gabrielle loves you and children so much, so maybe she's just a little upset, and Brother Samuel can just comfort her. No need to coax her. From what I know about her, she will come back crying and begging for my forgiveness within 3 months." Special Assistant Foster smiled, put down the contract and walked out. Samuel looked down at the 30th floor and saw the lights of thousands of houses gradually lighting up below. For no reason, I suddenly thought of Gabrielle from many years ago. The first time she was under him, she was nervous and scared, like a helpless little rabbit. His eyes were red and his voice was trembling. He also said some words he couldn't understand. "Samuel, I'm not just here to conquer you. In fact, I really like you. Otherwise, I won't do this with you. Samuel, please be nicer to me next time, okay?" Samuel leaned over and silenced her chatter with his lips. It also stopped her from crying all night. Over the years, Gabrielle has been very well behaved and obedient. The only thing that irritated him was that she was scheming and using the child to force him. He also said absurdly, "Without the child, the mission will fail and I will no longer exist." He must punish her. So in the past 5 years, he has never treated her well. Anyway, she is homeless and will stay with him until she dies. Her innocent prayers echoed in my ears again. "Samuel, I want to have a lovely child, a family of 3, and live in a cozy little home, okay?" Not good. He is the kind of person who doesn't want to have a family at all. He had never had such a thing as a home since he was a child. Now that everything is under his control, he doesn't need this thing anymore. On the day Gabrielle filed for divorce, he somehow did not attend the dinner and returned home early. "Where's Gabrielle?" the nanny whispered. "My wife moved out this afternoon." Samuel only felt that his inner irritation was getting worse, but he didn't show it on his face. He just snorted coldly. "She pretends very well." After saying that, he walked into the study and ignored me. 6. After getting the agreement, I returned to Hannigan's house. "Just pack up a few things and get ready to go." Warren Hannigan sat in the living room, playing with his tablet and chewing candy. Colorful wrapping paper was scattered all over the floor. He looked up at me and said calmly, "Dad allowed me to eat it. It's a gift from Aunt Sue, so leave it alone." I smiled and said, "I don't care, you can eat 100 of them." I squatted down and pinched his face. "It's you who has cavities, not me." "Warren Hannigan, I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" "Make room for you to welcome your new mother." "I won't come here again." Warren Hannigan frowned, his expression mirroring that of his father. "Mom, you're talking nonsense. Dad said you're an orphan too. You have nowhere else to go except to follow Dad." "Mom, can you be more mature? Aunt Sue wouldn't be as childish as you. At your age, you'd still want to run away from home." "Mom, please go away. I won't miss you." After saying that, he lowered his head and played games again. In the past, I would gently take away his electronic devices, then tell him, "Mom will play Lego with you, okay? Mom will go swimming with you? Mom, will you read picture books with me?" I would sacrifice a lot of time for self-improvement in exchange for high-quality companionship with him. Now I don't care anymore. Whoever wants to care can do it. "Okay, Warren Hannigan, I hope your mouth stays strong." After saying that, I dragged my small suitcase out of Hannigan's door. The sun shines on me warmly. It stung my eyes a little. For words emerged in my mind. Live towards the sun. 7. I rented an apartment in a boutique residential area with 2 elevators per unit. There's no need to buy it since you can't take it away after 3 years anyway. The community has a pleasant environment and scenery, and you can see the sea when you open the window. But you can also see people jumping into the sea. A tiny person walking slowly towards the waves alone. I instinctively rushed downstairs in my slippers, and across a road in Greenbelt was the beach. I picked up her little body. "Where are your parents?" The little girl was about 3 years old, with a pair of round eyes like grapes. Her eyes were wet, as if she had just cried. But she didn't say a word, just held the hem of her skirt tightly. "Camilla." A young and good-looking man walked over. It turned out that I didn't see clearly just now. There was a person sitting in the hammock on the tree on the beach, looking at the little girl. "Thank you. But don't worry, she doesn't dare to move forward. I'm watching her." The man went forward to hug the girl. Camilla, go home with Daddy. But the girl held my neck tightly. The pink little mouth uttered 2 words. Hug. The man was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, This is the first time Camilla has asked a stranger to hug her. This child is soft and milky and feels really good. I couldn't push her away, so I had to carry her all the way back to the community. I didn't expect they lived next door to me. The man thought for a moment and said, Miss Taylor, Camilla likes you very much. I know you are single and unemployed. There are only 2 of us in my family. I am a clean person with no bad habits. I am a doctor. I handed the child back to him. In a voice that the child cannot hear, he said, Even if you are a doctor, you can't use children to tease people. Are you still asking for my personal information? You look like a male model, but your behavior is so vulgar. He looked at me in astonishment. Miss Taylor, I would like to ask if you can help take care of Camilla for a while? Until I find a nanny that Camilla likes. Of course, the reward is up to you. This is what he said. He coughed lightly. Well, I know your personal information because I'm your landlord. Then I confirmed the information and found that he was the real landlord. I have always been able to admit my mistakes and correct them, and I have always been able to bend and stretch myself. I'm sorry, Mr. Landlord. I was indecent. 8. Maybe he felt soft-hearted when he saw the pitiful look in the little girl's eyes. I agreed to help take care of little Camilla temporarily. She is very quiet and doesn't talk much. When she was not going to kindergarten, she would often obediently bring her little stool and sit there watching me arrange flowers and draw. Every time I finished something, she would clap her little hands and praise me. Great, Gabrielle is great. I was the one who asked her to call my name. I like it this way to be friends with children. Sometimes I would be stunned for a moment. Warren Hannigan never seemed to be like this. He always complained, Mom, it's so boring, please play Lego with me. A cute and soft human cub like Camilla is truly a healing animal. The only weird thing about her is that she often calls for Mom and Dad in her sleep. Woke up with wet eyes. I held her in my arms and comforted her softly with concern. Give her a pear hawthorn lollipop I made. She put it in her mouth and her eyes narrowed into little crescents in satisfaction. Give me a kiss, it tastes like sweet fruit. When her father Matthew Murphy came home from get off work, she showed him her treasure. Dad, the candy Gabrielle makes tastes better than the ones you buy. Sometimes I can't bear to finish it in one go, so I take small bites slowly. I smiled and said, Eat it. If you like it, I can make it again. It turns out that things that Warren Hannigan despises are treasured by others. Before my divorce, my life revolved around Warren Hannigan. Whenever I go out for a while, I worry about whether Warren Hannigan gets bumped or banged. Maybe it was the company of Camilla. These days since I left the Hannigan family, I seem to think less about Warren Hannigan and everything about the Hannigan family. Instead, the housekeeper contacted me several times. The young master is a little uncomfortable without you telling him a bedtime story. You'll get used to it eventually. The young master has a toothache. Do you want to come back and keep him company? No, I'm not a doctor. 9. A few days later, I unexpectedly ran into Warren Hannigan. Matthew Murphy went out of town for an exchange meeting and asked me to help pick up Camilla for a few days. But I overlooked that Camilla's new kindergarten was the same one as Warren Hannigan's. Matthew Murphy is really willing to spend money to attend such an expensive private kindergarten. I took Camilla out of the car and just sent her inside. I ran into Warren Hannigan head-on. Also sitting in the car was Samuel, who looked expressionless. Warren Hannigan opened his mouth to shout, Mom. He swallowed the words back when they came to his lips. Even if we are divorced, he is still my son and an old acquaintance. I greeted him generously. Hi, Warren Hannigan. As a result, he didn't respond and ran into the classroom like an inflated pufferfish. The ex-husband Samuel in the car is also an old acquaintance. But I don't really feel like saying hello. Unexpectedly, he condescended to get out of the car and speak first. Didn't I tell you that you are not allowed to meet Warren Hannigan in private without my permission? I was so angry that I laughed. No, it was just a chance encounter, believe it or not. I'm too lazy to pay attention to him. Samuel sneered behind me. Gabrielle, how long are you going to keep being stubborn? 10. Gabrielle has been away from home for over a month. Samuel didn't understand. Just a slender person. Why the house seemed so much emptier when she was not around. But he had no problem adapting. It's just that Warren Hannigan often cries. She pestered the housekeeper and asked, "When will Mom come home?" He couldn't tell how he felt about Warren Hannigan. Maybe I was a child abandoned next to a garbage dump when I was young. I've never known what it's like to have parents. So he doesn't quite know how to be a father. Stop crying. What does it look like when a boy cries? Warren Hannigan hiccuped. Dad, can you tell me a bedtime story like Mom? No, you don't have to sleep. Warren Hannigan was stunned. Finally, Samuel sat by Warren Hannigan's crib and told him a story. The more Samuel talked, the more angry he became. He should be in the study looking at the financial statements. How can I sit here and read children's picture books? With a snap, he closed the picture book. Turn off the lights. Go to bed if you want. Anyway, he won't talk about it anymore. Warren Hannigan pursed his lips and slid reluctantly into bed. For the first time, he felt that Gabrielle's willful running away from home had disrupted the order of his life. I held this anger until I saw her in Warren Hannigan's kindergarten a few days later. The upset mood in my heart seemed to subside a little. Just tell me, how could she bear to leave her son? He even deliberately chose the time when he rarely had to take Warren Hannigan to school. She is just being stubborn and acting. Mrs. Hannigan doesn't want to be a good person, but instead wants a divorce. Butler, please ask Warren Hannigan to take a leave of absence these days and not go to the kindergarten for the time being. He wanted Gabrielle to make this trip in vain. Want to see the kids? Sure, come and ask him. But 3 days later the housekeeper whispered, Madam still goes to the kindergarten every day. Mr. Hannigan, it seems like the wife is sending someone else's child to school. I didn't come to see you specially. Samuel was stunned for a moment. 11. Matthew Murphy is a man of his word. In the 3rd month that I stayed with Camilla, I found a gentle aunt to look after her. Out of habit, I also help out when I am free. It would be better to say that we are accompanying each other rather than taking care of her. When Matthew Murphy is not busy, he often cooks for me. Maybe it's the doctor's professional habit. He would often dissect the fish to remove the bones, or shave the meat off the bones before cooking. But the taste is pretty good. Every time I eat the food with a little fear, but also with satisfaction. After dinner, Camilla played magnetic puzzles on the small table in the living room as usual. We sat on the sofa and chatted. There's an inexplicable feeling of a peaceful and tranquil life. I heard from my aunt that Camilla has been calling for Mom and Dad in her sleep recently. Matthew Murphy hummed. It will take some time for Camilla to get used to the new aunt. I couldn't help but ask, did you do something to make Camilla wake up crying in her sleep? Matthew Murphy whispered. Camilla's parents passed away unexpectedly last year. Camilla needs a psychological adjustment process. I was stunned for a moment. Then who are you? Human traffickers? Matthew Murphy couldn't help but smile. What are you thinking? I'm her uncle. After her sister left, I adopted her and we lived as father and daughter because I didn't want her to be looked at strangely by others. I patted him on the shoulder and said, You are quite responsible. Matthew Murphy suddenly came close to me. I could even smell a faint scent of grass on him. Gabrielle, do you think any girl would be interested in a man like me who is single and raising a child? I like him so much. He's handsome, capable at work, and most importantly, he's kind-hearted. So, do you like me? The style of painting changed too quickly. I can't handle it. I can't. Why? After 3 years I will go home. Matthew Murphy put away his faint smile. There was a look of loneliness on his face. Gabrielle, can't you forget your ex-husband? I laughed. How is that possible? I heard that she's getting married soon. Matthew Murphy's eyelashes trembled and his eyes lit up. There was unconcealable excitement in his voice. Yeah. Then should I give him a big gift and wish him a happy wedding? I was stunned for a moment. Matthew Murphy, my ex-husband's brother, is getting married. Why are you so excited? She was as happy as if her ex-husband was getting married. 12. It's been almost half a year. Gabrielle showed no signs of returning to Hannigan's house. She seemed to be walking cleanly. Samuel is very busy every day and doesn't think of Gabrielle very often. Warren Hannigan also gradually stopped crying. He just often stares blankly at the little puppet made by Gabrielle. But he was well taken care of by several nannies. Samuel has nothing to worry about. But Sue has hinted at him many times. Samuel, would it look good on my finger if I wore a pink diamond? The outside world also spread that Samuel was going to marry Sue. I wonder if Gabrielle heard it. In fact, Sue is someone he has liked for a long time in his memory. Perhaps childhood memories are profound. He had just arrived at the welfare home at that time and was thin and weak. But his eyes were fierce, like a wild little leopard that refused to admit defeat. Therefore, he was often bullied by the kids in the welfare home. That day, he was beaten badly by them. It was Sue who called the dean, and the group of children who led the group of children dispersed. Sue handed him a piece of fruit candy with a smile. Here, it's very sweet. Well, it was very sweet, the sweetest one he had ever tasted in his youth. He never doubted that the woman he loved most was Sue, but a corner of my heart was secretly singing a different tune. For example, he was inexplicably driven to drive to Gabrielle's building for the first time. Watching Gabrielle, a handsome man, and a cute little girl walking into the community with a smile. He recognized the man. It was a bit surprising that Gabrielle knew such a person. Just as Gabrielle walked out alone, he stopped her and looked at her with a half-smile. Are you so patient this time? Gabrielle saw him, was stunned for a moment, and didn't say anything. Shouldn't she be happy that he came? Giving you a way out but you don't want to take it? She didn't say anything, and Samuel felt inexplicably unhappy. Gabrielle, you know my temper. Once I make a decision, I won't change it. If you still want Warren Hannigan, then move back here yourself. Otherwise, if I marry Sue, you won't have a chance. Gabrielle's expression was as calm as when she mentioned divorce in his office half a year ago. Congratulations, Mr. Hannigan. Thank you, Mr. Hannigan, for asking me to give you a gift, and even coming all the way here in person. Samuel's heart suddenly ached. A nameless fire suddenly ignited. Gabrielle, do you think you caught a big fish? Teen. I was stunned for a moment. What big fish? Samuel sneered. The prince of the Murphy family in South City, Matthew Murphy. I vaguely heard Samuel say this before. The family he had the most trouble with in the business world was the Murphy family in South City. He is good at both black and white business and has a lot of financial resources. Matthew Murphy may be a junior doctor, but he is the only child of the Murphy family, and he will eventually inherit the family business. Do you think their family would marry a divorced woman like you? I don't like to hear that. What's wrong with second marriage? Is second marriage a woman's problem? Many people who remarry are just unlucky and meet bad men. Samuel, luckily you have some money in your pocket, otherwise you are a man with a bad temper, who likes to use cold violence in marriage and likes to scold his ex-wife after divorce. In our village, you will be single for the rest of your life. Samuel rarely suffered a setback and his face darkened. I felt kind of good for some reason. Ignore his dark face and turn away. Unexpectedly, he met Matthew Murphy, who had been listening in the corner for who knows how long. I coughed lightly. I'm usually very gentle, not like this, do you believe it? Matthew Murphy nodded. Yes. As we walked, inexplicably, we suddenly smiled at each other in tacit understanding. I asked him, what are you laughing at? Gabrielle, you're pretty cute when you curse. Of course, I think what you said makes sense. Although I am not a young girl. But being praised by a good-looking man who is interested in you. I couldn't help but blush on my cheeks. I walked forward quickly. Matthew Murphy followed at a leisurely pace. Gabrielle, the most important thing is that my marriage is my own. It has nothing to do with the Murphy family. Gabrielle, did you hear that? 14. A week before Samuel's wedding, Warren Hannigan unexpectedly came to see me, accompanied by his butler. Warren Hannigan is almost 8 years old. He lost his baby fat, grew taller, and now looks like Samuel. Hi, Warren Hannigan. His eyes were slightly red. Mom. I took Warren Hannigan upstairs. Did your father agree to let you come? I know that the butler would not dare to bring Warren Hannigan without Samuel's permission. Warren Hannigan nodded. Mom, do you really not want me anymore? I smiled and said, Mom didn't abandon you, it was you who didn't want Mom. Then why don't you go home? I sighed softly. I am divorced from your father, And divorce means we cannot live together. Warren Hannigan turned his head and lowered his eyes to the floor. Can't you just go back for me? You're like this and you still say you don't want me. Warren Hannigan, why should I go back because of you? Although Warren Hannigan is young, he is very smart. When I talk to him, I don't treat him as a child because he can understand. Once I wanted to survive the mission so badly, and I was obsessed with it because I lacked love and wanted my ideal family, a loving husband and cute children. But everything is like sand in your hand. The tighter you hold it, the faster it slips away. In the past 5 years, I have only revolved around you and your father. I have become unlike myself. This kind of self-indulgent sacrifice is meaningless. I am not happy. Only when you love yourself first can you love others. Warren Hannigan, there's nothing wrong with a mother loving herself first. Warren Hannigan seemed to understand. He muttered quietly, "Then why didn't you take me away after the divorce?" I told him seriously, "I can take you away. I don't have to go back to my own world. After all, I gave birth to you and I do need to be responsible for you." But Warren Hannigan, think about it carefully. If you live with me, you won't have luxury cars to drive around, nor will you inherit a large fortune, nor will you have a group of nannies and drivers around you. All you have is the ordinary life you see before your eyes. Are you willing? Warren Hannigan hung his head and said nothing. I understand the child I gave birth to. He has his own choice. There was a sudden knock on the door. As soon as I opened the door, a pink sweetheart cannonball rushed into my arms. Gabrielle, I want some pear candy." Camilla saw Warren Hannigan and blinked. "Gabrielle, is this handsome brother your son?" I smiled and nodded. Gabrielle grabbed a handful of pear candies from the table and handed them to Warren Hannigan. "Brother, eat it." Gabrielle made it deliciously. "It's healthy and delicious. Much better than the high-end candies you buy outside." Warren Hannigan took the candy, suddenly burst into tears. "Mom, I'm sorry." I know he was remembering how he once threw away the candy I made myself as garbage. Sometimes it is difficult to find back the things you throw away. So does love. 15. Samuel married Sue. The wedding was unprecedentedly grand and luxurious, and became a hot topic in South City. Sue is smiling like a flower in the picture. But Samuel showed no emotion. Warren Hannigan served as a flower girl in an exquisite little dress. His facial expression was exactly the same as his father's, and no emotion could be seen. However, the birthday wish he made when he was 5 years old finally came true. All I can say is, son, you make the wish yourself, so you have to accept it yourself. What's strange is, Samuel gets married. The happiest people are Matthew Murphy and Camilla Song. The father and daughter insisted on taking me to the villa for vacation. Gabrielle, there's a beautiful starry sky over there. And we can set off fireworks. Camilla spun around happily. I love watching fireworks the most. Watch Camilla gradually get over the loss of her parents. Happier every day. I am very happy too. Under the night sky we ate hot pot and cut watermelon. There are countless stars in the sky, fireflies are flying around with their sparkling butts, and frogs in the pond not far away are croaking one after another. In fact, this is the life I want. Camilla handed me the watermelon and said, Gabrielle, your ex-husband's brother is getting married, aren't you sad? I almost choked on my watermelon. Who told you to ask that? Dad didn't let me ask, I asked it myself. Matthew Murphy's hand trembled as he held the tea. Gabrielle, don't be sad, you still have us. Even if that pretty brother calls someone else mom. But you still have me. I can be your baby, okay? I smiled and pinched her little face. What else do you want to say? Say it all at once. Camilla cleared her throat like an adult. If you think that having me as your baby isn't enough, my dad can also be your husband. Now my hand started shaking. As if the situation was not awkward enough, little Camilla loudly asked Matthew Murphy, who seemed very busy but was not doing anything. Right, Dad, you can do it, right? You can be Gabrielle's husband, right? Matthew Murphy hummed softly. The roots of her ears turned slightly red. Then he looked up at the sky, at Camilla, at the trees and the flowers, but not at me. 16. Happy times always seem to have an accelerator added to them. 3 years passed in a flash. To be fair, I lived a very happy life in the 3 years after my divorce. The only regret is why I didn't divorce Samuel earlier. Host on the third day of next month, at 1600 hours p.m., the program will start. Stay or leave? The system seemed a little surprised to hear my answer. Are you sure you want to leave? Gabrielle, I thought you would choose to stay. 17. Samuel couldn't tell that he married Sue because he liked her more. Or maybe it was because I wanted to piss off Gabrielle more. Life after marriage is dull. Nothing has changed and yet everything has changed. He developed a drinking habit for unknown reasons. After a few drinks, my nerves were numbed and I felt that I was living a real life. Otherwise, when awake, he always felt that there was Gabrielle's shadow lingering in his home. What the hell? How can you see Gabrielle when you are drunk? The other person's voice was cold, not at all like the soft-spoken Gabrielle. I'm Sue, of course, not Gabrielle. Samuel, why did you marry me when you had Gabrielle in your heart? The alcohol gave him a splitting headache, and he couldn't think about the problem accurately at all. Does he have Gabrielle in his heart? No, right? He has always been cold towards Gabrielle, and felt that she was dispensable. Is there? He vaguely remembered that when Sue got married abroad, he was just a little sad, and did not regret why he did not go abroad with her earlier. But after divorcing Gabrielle, it was like cutting my flesh with a blunt knife. I never felt the slightest bit of pain before, but now I feel the recurring tearing pain. In fact, he also wants a warm little home. In the past, he just stubbornly thought that he didn't need it. Sue, what do you want? Divorce. It's tiring to live through the days of quarreling and scolding each other. She should be tired too. Turns out that not loving is such a tiring thing. Sue bit her lower lip and the corners of her eyes turned red. Samuel, you wanted to marry me, and I will never divorce you even if I die. Let's just torture each other for the rest of our lives. No one will have an easy life. Sue slammed the door angrily in her high heels. Samuel saw Warren Hannigan across the study and closed the door expressionlessly. Is this home still home? Fuck. It's like three strangers living together. The red wine glass in his hand instantly hit the wall and broke. Once it's broken, it's broken. It's not complete. 18. The night before I left, I couldn't sleep. It's a lot like when I was a kid and couldn't sleep the night before my first long journey. Warren Hannigan and Camilla all told me that I was leaving. Warren Hannigan said with a nonchalant expression, "It's just when I said I was leaving." His eyes turned red. Mom, I can't keep you. You are yourself first. I respect your decision. Warren Hannigan, thank you for your understanding. After all, we are mother and son. We don't have any deep hatred, but we are not close either. The blood relationship cannot be severed. It is quite suitable for us to just keep it simple and respect each other. Camilla cried until her eyes were red, but she still pretended to be generous. Gabrielle, I'm fine. You can go home if you want. But you have to think about me when you're on top. I wiped her tears with heartache. You make it sound like I'm in heaven. I'm going home, baby. Don't cry so hard. Camilla pouted. My dad was crying secretly too. I was stunned for a moment. Matthew Murphy would cry? He is a big man of 5 feet 4 inches. I haven't seen him for over a week. I heard that the hospital has been very busy recently, and he even has to squeeze in time for sleep. I thought about it and decided to meet him one last time. 19. I have never seen such chaos in a hospital. Blood spurted all over the wall. A group of doctors and nurses rushed the patient to the operating room, and I glanced and saw that the patient lying there was wearing a white coat. My pupils constricted. Who is that patient? I couldn't squeeze in, but someone told me. A middle-aged patient attacked a doctor, and then jumped off a building to commit suicide. Dr. McBride, who was hacked, was a man of integrity and medical skills. It's really heartbreaking. I pressed my chest and my heart was beating fast. I have met Dr. McBride, a colleague and good friend of Matthew Murphy, a gentle and kind doctor. A few more accusations from the patient's family came into my ears. That Matthew Murphy is so chilling. Instead of rushing to save Dr. McBride, you rushed to save that murderer. Maybe he's jealous that Dr. McBride's medical skills are better than his. Perhaps there were already doctors rushing to save Dr. McBride, and Dr. Matthew Murphy couldn't squeeze in, so he went to save the murderer. Nonsense. They don't understand anything. Matthew Murphy is not that kind of person. I didn't have the energy to argue with them, and was anxiously waiting for the results of the operation. The operating room door opened. There are two pieces of good news. Dr. McBride was able to survive. His life is not in danger. It's a medical miracle. The murderer was also saved by Matthew Murphy. Only then did I breathe a sigh of relief. I have the energy to talk to those uninformed family members of the patients. Dr. McBride is already being treated by a skilled specialist. There's no need for Matthew Murphy to force his way in and cause more trouble. This is a hospital, not a market. Would it be easier to sell vegetables if there were too many people? The murderer should be saved so that he can see with his own eyes that he is convicted, despised by the world, and condemned. Otherwise, it would be a pity for a scum like him to die. Those people just now blushed and stopped talking. I turned around and found Matthew Murphy eavesdropping again. He looked tired but had a bright smile. "Thank you for standing up for me, Gabrielle. Otherwise, I would have been wrongly accused and nearly died." When no one was around, he asked me quietly, "You came to see me to tell me that you won't go out tomorrow, right?" I know he's talking about being disconnected from the system. I smiled. "Sorry, I have to go out tomorrow." 20. Today is Sue's birthday, and she held a lavish banquet in her villa. Samuel let her do whatever she wanted. Now, apart from money, he can't give her anything else. Warren Hannigan told the housekeeper yesterday that he was going out to see Gabrielle. Samuel followed him. Warren Hannigan now talks less to him than to the housekeeper and nanny at home. Today, Warren Hannigan took the initiative to knock on Samuel's study door. His eyes were red, as if he had just cried. Samuel frowned. "Didn't I tell you that boys are not allowed to cry easily? You cried yesterday, and you're crying today?" Warren Hannigan's voice dropped. "Mom is leaving today, going back to her own home, and she will never come back again," Warren Hannigan said and left. Samuel sat there for a long time before coming back to his senses. He took a deep puff of his cigarette, feeling inexplicably flustered. He felt that Gabrielle would not lie. It was her system that was going to take her back. Now, he actually believed that she had a system. Samuel grabbed the car keys on the table and wanted to go downstairs. As soon as I opened the door, Sue was standing outside. She walked in and pushed the door shut. "Today is my birthday. You still want to look for her?" "Samuel, you bastard, have you ever thought about how I feel?" Samuel didn't argue. At this point, he couldn't refute it. Sue pressed her body against the door. She cried and made a fuss, and most of the delicate makeup on her face was gone. Samuel gritted his teeth and said, "Get out of the way. Today, I will never let you go out to find her, even if I die." Samuel didn't want to hurt her, because he felt that she was quite pitiful. A woman whose husband doesn't love her. He just stood by the window and sneered. "Sue, I don't care about you, so you don't care about me, okay? Have you ever thought about how I feel when you do those lousy things?" Sue's face was visibly upset. "What's the matter?" Samuel looked at her now as if she were a stranger. "Assistant Lead Director Sue, you can find anyone you want, but please don't harm the people around me." Sue burst into tears. "If you hadn't ignored me and used cold violence against me, would I have done anything wrong?" Samuel glanced at his watch. "There's no time." He pushed open the second-floor window and jumped down. If he didn't leave, he felt like he was going crazy. As soon as Samuel got in the car, he stepped on the accelerator to the floor. Maybe this is his last hope. Hopefully Gabrielle will stay. However, the opposite happened. He drove at full speed and collided with an oncoming sports car at a corner. With a sharp crash, he completely lost control of the car. His consciousness gradually became blurred. The airbag deployed. Blood was dripping from the top of his head. One of his legs was stuck under the seat and couldn't move. It was probably disabled. This was the first time Samuel cried as an adult. Crying like a baby. He knew he had no chance. There was no chance of keeping Gabrielle. 21. Today is the day I break away. But I didn't leave and no one knew. I had a hard time finding Matthew Murphy and his daughter. In the afterglow of the setting sun, Matthew Murphy stood there like a fine sculpture, quietly looking at the coastline in the distance, looking lonely and decadent. And Camilla Song was digging the sand with the small shovel I gave her. While digging, he kept muttering to himself. I walked closer and listened and laughed. "Crab, don't pinch me." Gabrielle passed away. I had to think of 100 happy things to hold back my tears. If Dad can hold it in, so can I. If you hurt me, I will really cry for you. I squatted down and took all the little crabs out of the sand. Dig it, baby. Camilla looked at me, suddenly stunned, then turned around and shouted, Dad, come quickly. I'm hallucinating in broad daylight. I saw Gabrielle. In the setting sun, Matthew Murphy slowly raised the corners of his lips, with a hint of red at the corners of his eyes. Camilla, it's true. Gabrielle is back. Camilla was so happy. Gabrielle, you're not leaving, right? Matthew Murphy put his hands in his pockets and said, Didn't you say you were going out today? I pointed to the cake beside me and said, Today is your birthday, can't I go out and buy you a cake? Matthew Murphy's smile brightened visibly. Camilla ran around in circles on the beach. The waves chased her little feet, making her laugh happily. Matthew Murphy's eyes flickered. Hey, is it because of us that you were delayed from returning home? That's so embarrassing, Gabrielle. The corners of my mouth lifted. Matthew Murphy, please give me some tea. Of course it's not because of you. Because I can't go back for the time being. 22. When I was in the hospital yesterday, the system was still complaining. Women are fickle indeed. You said you wanted to leave last month, but now you want to stay? System, please help me. Can you use my points to keep Dr. McBride alive? Because the system told me that Dr. McBride could not be saved and died unfortunately. Okay, host. Once confirmed, your points will be reset to 0. You will have nothing and will not be able to return home. It's okay, system. I'll save up some more. If it's still not big enough, I can just use your points and borrow from you. The system was angry. You living father, don't always think about using me. I am a stingy and selfish system. No, you are a kind system. I know that there is actually no 3-year cooling off period. It was made up by the system. The central system would never make such a broken rule. Because the system wants me to be happy more than anyone else. In that world, I was a lonely vegetable. And when I woke up, I had no relatives or friends. The system hopes that I can find my own happiness in this world. Even the house I live in now was found with the help of the system. Host, this is good. I feel like we will both get rich if we live here. It's just a system, how can it make money? He is just introducing me to the right person. The system was not in vain. Thanks to it, I met Matthew Murphy and his daughter. 23. I made a deal with the system and used up all the points I received to exchange for Dr. McBride's life. So I can't leave. When I finished saying this, Matthew Murphy suddenly froze, then pulled me into a tight hug. A stream of cold liquid flowed into my neck. Gabrielle, thank you. You are really good, really good. Camilla clapped her hands and laughed. Dad, are you embarrassed? You're such a grown man, but you can cry more than me. I smiled and pushed him away. Yeah, a 1.8-meter tall man is crying like this. Is he going to create a sea? Matthew Murphy stood up straight and coughed lightly. Not 1.80 meters. I was stunned for a moment. What do you mean? It's 1.887 meters my height. I laughed and Camilla laughed too. Until the sun sets over the coastline. Our family of 3 was bathed in the afterglow of the sunset. Let's go home hugging each other back to our home.